Right, everybody. Thank you very much again. Nick, over to you. Tell us all about Preston and the northwest of England.
Okay, I'll try and just share my screen now. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, hang on. Okay, everyone. Thanks very much for having me, Chris. So yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of a company overview about Alliance, who we are, our relationship with Holborn. Obviously, we've worked together for several years. Our best-selling development at the moment is the Exchange in Preston. So I'm obviously going to touch on why Preston's been very popular at the moment, and also obviously a bit more information in the specifics of the development, and then finish off with a couple of recommendations that obviously that you can look at, the types of returns you'd be getting from sort of individual units. So anyone wants any questions at any time, or Chris, I know that you like to make it pretty conversational. I'm happy to stop at any point. So let's just...
We've already got one from Andrew, who's already asked a question. So yeah, please do put your questions at the bottom, and we'll make it more conversational and lectatorial, if that's a word. So yeah, thanks, Nick.
Great. Okay, so a bit of information about Alliance Investments. So we're part of Property Alliance Group, who are a major Northwest developer, mainly focused in Manchester. So that's one of our buildings at the moment that's going up in Manchester called Oxygen. That's by Piccadilly Station. That's obviously, it's a very large project in the centre of Manchester. And what we've done over the years is create more sort of value add-on to our services. So we've got Alliance Investments, who I work for. That's the residential arm of our business. That's who we have a relationship with Holborn with. And then we've got Alliance City Living as well, that manage all of our buildings, all of our residential buildings, and do all the lettings and management for those buildings, obviously, once they're complete. So we pretty much go from buying land, going through planning, doing everything on a particular development. And what's happened over the years is we, because of our success, we've been going Alliance Investments have been going 6 years, Property Alliance Group 30 years. We've had the likes of the Heating Group and other developers approach us to use our sort of sales and marketing mechanism across the world to help promote their projects. And that's obviously the Exchange that I'm talking about today isn't actually developed by us, but I'll talk about the Heating Group in a little bit more detail later on. But it just gives you an idea of where everything has spawned from. So just to touch on Property Alliance Group's residential success in 2020, obviously it was a challenging year for lots of things, but this will just give you an idea of what we completed, and also obviously the lettings and management that we carried out on a lot of these buildings as well. So Axis Tower was in the centre of, bang in the centre of Manchester on Deansgate. That completed in Q1 last year. As you can see, 99% sold out upon completion, and 99% of the units that were up for rent were rented out as well by Alliance City Living. That was no mean feat in Q1 of last year. Obviously, lockdown hit. Viewings were very difficult. They were renting most of the apartments out via Zoom calls initially. So yeah, credit to the team there that they obviously carried out that, and it was a major success. Just gives you a bit of an idea of the building, its locality, and obviously the specification it was finished to. Downtown is a development in Castlefield. That the final block of that was finished last year, again in Q1. That's proved to be a very successful investment for people. Also, again, rented out extremely well. We're actually looking at another scheme very, very close by to downtown at the moment. That's something that hopefully later on the year we'll have some more information on. Just again, specification very similar to what we've seen before. Then Parkgate was a development that we worked on in Birmingham, just outside the centre of Birmingham. It was one that we worked with Holborn quite closely on. Yields have proved extremely valuable there. He's looking at sort of 7% yields on some of the units that were bought early on there. So that was a very similar price point to the Preston project, and that's why we brought the Preston project on board, is to basically replace this in the portfolio. And it's a slightly different price point to the centre of Manchester or the centre of Birmingham, for example. It's a slightly different investment case, and that's very similar with what we're looking at. I'll touch on a bit more with Preston and sort of starting prices and everything later on. So what do we offer? I mean, obviously Holborn offer a lot of these things themselves, but we have recommended solicitors on each development. I mean, the good thing about that is that if we're effectively using them in bulk, we can drive down the cost for people buying in a particular development, or and obviously you don't want high solicitors costs. It's just a sunk cost at the start of something. Interior design is something that on every development we provide. So each development will have something specific. Furniture packages available, which is pretty key when you're renting it out. And obviously, if you're based abroad, you don't want to be trying to furnish the property yourself. So it's something that on each development will have packages available when you come to completion. That's very similar. Yep.
I believe you've got an announcement at the end of this as well with regard to solicitors' costs that we'll obviously save to later, but there is actually an incentive you're doing, particularly for people that are actually joining this webinar. So it's not a webinar. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll look forward to that.
Correct. Yeah. Mortgages. We obviously have a mortgage partner, and then Darren's on the call here, who can talk you through mortgage options. We did quite a lot of work with Darren and his team when we launched this project with Holborn to start looking at potential lenders or potential issues that might arise that lenders don't particularly like in the local area or anything like that. So obviously, the mortgage market changes closer to the time, but we've done all of our due diligence, and there's sort of several lenders and lots of options that are in the pipeline. And I'm sure Darren can give you some indicative ideas of what's available now on a project like Preston, but obviously the actual mortgage offers and everything come closer to the time, which we'll work with you on to make sure that you've got everything in place if you are to use that. So where's Preston? I'm sure most people know where it is on this call, but for those of you that don't, it's situated equidistant between Liverpool and Manchester in the northwest of England. If you just look at these statistics here, a few headline stats, it's the third largest city in the northwest of England as it stands. There's £28 billion worth of income per annum in that particular location. The main area that people don't know massively about of where these big businesses are coming from, or where the employees are coming from at the moment, and the population growth is, it's a massive area for the engineering and defence sector. And you can see by those figures, there's 85,000 people just purely in that sector, in that region. So it's obviously a very big area for that. And if you look here, the stats there, number one for aerospace, fourth in the world, and number one for advanced manufacturing. So yeah, there's certainly different and specialist areas that obviously businesses are working in within Preston. So connectivity wise, something I didn't actually realize is that you can get a direct train to London from Preston. It's 40 minutes to Manchester and Liverpool. So you've got people now looking to potentially live there and commute to those cities. So it's very popular for those types of people and clients that are looking at that. And HS2 is spreading to Preston. So it's now the fastest growing city in the northwest of England, obviously with the Northern Powerhouse Initiative and the HS2 being delivered to this particular region. You're only going to see more and more wealth spread across the UK. And we've already seen that in the likes of Liverpool, the likes of Birmingham, and the likes of Manchester. And Preston seems to be one of those cities that's going to benefit. Maybe it's on a slightly different curve. It might be 10 years behind Manchester, but that's obviously where getting involved early in a city like Preston is where the value is when you're looking at a sort of medium to long-term investment.
It's also nice, Nick, when you think about it, with a place like Preston in Lancashire, for those people that are abroad and don't know England that well. I mean, there's some beautiful, beautiful countryside as well. You've got the Lake District above there. You've got Blackpool and places like that. It's actually a nice area to be as well. I don't know why you're smiling about Blackpool.
Yeah, I wouldn't put Blackpool and the Lake Districts in the same category, but yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, there's lots of nice golf courses as well nearby, isn't there? I mean, there's Lytham St Anne's. I mean, there's lots of, in Southport, there's some good golf courses as well. And yeah, the Lake Districts is one of the most attractive areas in the country. So yeah, in terms of livability and what you've got on your doorstep, yeah, it's a fantastic area to be.
And also with the growth in Liverpool that you mentioned, and Manchester, that obviously you've got places in, 40 minutes is not a great length of time, especially with these COVID times, and people want a nice place to live. And commuting down to Manchester, Liverpool, it's not going to be too much of a hardship, and a great price point. I mean, I know you haven't got there yet, but it is a great price point.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. The value of investing into a smaller city or tertiary cities, which is where the market's at the moment, is that the price point and the price per square foot is drastically different to somewhere like Manchester, where the curve now is the centre of Manchester now you're looking at £300,000 starting price for a 2-bed. I mean it's getting up to sort of, even some of the units that we have available in Oxygen are £400,000 now. So it's getting pretty punchy to live in the centre of town.
And just as important is, where are the tenants going to come from? When you said the huge aerospace industry around there, but also new industries like the car battery industry, and things are happening up there that are going to mean executives are going to move to that part of the world and need somewhere to rent because there's a shortfall. Yeah,
definitely. And I think I'll touch on the university in a bit as well. And that's very much obviously focused to those particular sectors. I didn't realize the size of that UPlan University as well. So I think there's 80 or 90,000 students that have who studied at the university living in the centre of Preston now. So that's obviously where your renters are coming from, not necessarily straight out of university, but maybe a couple of jobs down the line. They're looking at the types of buildings that the Heating Group are producing in Preston, which obviously the exchange is focusing at those young professionals, I guess.
Yeah, and Darren, just to give Nick a bit of a rest, what do you see happening in the mortgage market at the moment before he goes on to the next slide?
The mortgage market seems to be getting really, really busy again, which is fantastic news. Just had another show, as you call it, with the other team, and they're actually seeing some shoots of growth. So actually, one of the things with all these different areas like Manchester, Liverpool, and Blackpool, and Preston, and Leeds, etc., and Sheffield, obviously, was predominantly people that were moving into those areas could afford to buy second homes, because the mortgage market was really, really busy. So people could actually, especially in the UK, clients could actually buy a second home. But actually now that's not the case. So they're now trying to find rental properties so they can actually just stay there just for the week. And then obviously if they're working obviously in those areas, like Nick was saying, the aerospace, the engineer. I lived in Bristol for 15 years, and that was quite with Rolls-Royce and BA Systems, but a lot of them are actually moving out there now. So the mortgage market's definitely getting busier. Not so much for the second homes, but especially for rental market, it's just going up, which is brilliant. So the investors that are buying, especially if you get in there in early doors, like Nick was saying, some of the properties obviously now £400,000. Sometimes that can squeeze the market a little bit, but actually, especially these areas of the mortgage market, and we've done all the due diligence, is really, really popular, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there, and I didn't make it earlier on, but we do an enormous amount of due diligence on all the properties that Holborn are put out there. Sorry, Nick, just thought I'd give you a rest.
No, it's fine. I think just touching on what Darren was saying then, I think a lot of the Heating Group, obviously a specialist in Preston, I think what they've worked on in the past, I think a lot of the major companies have struck deals with them on their letting sides for like your execs who do go and spend maybe 4 or 5 days a week in that region. They might live in other parts of the country. So that's the type of thing where you can secure obviously tenants pretty easily. I mean, if big businesses are coming in and are taking sort of contracts out of maybe 6-10 units in a particular building, then obviously only as a client you're benefiting from that comfort as well. So I think that's where a lot of the renters are coming from as well. So it's a good point.
And we've also got lenders that actually do corporate let. So that's completely different to personal letting with the short-term tenancies. So like Nick was saying, a corporation or a business might go, well, actually I'm going to take 8 of those properties just to rent out to our employees. So we've got lenders that do that as well, because it's slightly different to on the tenancy.
What's sort of driving this change and growth in Preston? I think it's obviously you need to look at key sort of investment drivers. So 36% of the Preston's population are under the age of 25, so that's the generation rent, as they call it. That's very similar to the stats in the likes of Liverpool and Manchester, and why there's such high sort of rental markets in those regions. So that's a key stat to look at. 10.6% is a stat that was released the other day in terms of a year-on-year growth. I think to last week, it was a 10.6% growth in the city centre of Preston on the rents from the previous year. So obviously, you always want capital appreciation in your property, but also you want to see the rent and the rental growth as well. And I mean, that's a pretty spectacular rental growth in a year. I mean, obviously you can't promise that every year, but it shows the demand that's happening in the city centre. There's lots of commercial investment. Obviously, with commercial investments, you tend to see with upgrading of office space, you tend to see big businesses moving into that and committing to the city, which is again what you want to see. With obviously an investment, you want the population to be growing, and that's a key driver. There's £434 million worth of infrastructure and local council investment going into the area, which I'll touch on a little bit more in a second. And there's £200 million master plan for the university over the next few years as well. So all of these things are showing that's major commitment of funds and infrastructure to the city, which is only going to improve things, house prices, and obviously drive more and more businesses there. Oh, sorry, what happened there? Let me just go through that. On to the university. I touched on that statistic before, that 85,000 graduates now live in Preston that went to this university. Obviously, when you're going there doing specialist kind of degrees, you obviously want to work for those types of employers that seem to be very much in that region. It's the 5th largest university based on graduate intake, and it's a 4-minute drive away from the Exchange. So again, I mean, obviously it looks fantastic, and it's certainly going in the right direction as a university itself, especially with that investment I just touched upon before. Here's a few employers of Preston. Obviously some major names that you'll know there. That's where the types of workers are going to be coming out directly into those types of businesses. And then the planned regeneration in Preston that I just touched on a little bit. So Preston, South Ribble and Lancashire City deal is providing, well, it's aiming to provide 17,000 new homes and 20,000 new jobs, and 1 million square foot of commercial floor space. That's already been committed to. There's lots of articles you can read online about that. And obviously it shows that it's all part of the Northern Powerhouse Initiative, is that these types of funds are being deployed to these areas to just continue to help them grow. And I mean, it's all driven towards the arrival of HS2. Whenever that arrives in 10, 12 years, obviously there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of commercial investment that needs to happen before that's delivered. A bit like what happened with Crossrail in London. I mean, that's what you've seen in those major areas of Crossrail and the stops that are going out towards the end stop of the Crossrail line, is that you've seen those areas massively develop and benefit from that being delivered in that region. So part of that city deal is the Stonygate master plan, which is basically a revamp of the city centre of Preston. So you'll see there that the Exchange is based in the centre of this new urban village. So there's 1,600 new homes being developed there. 200 of those are in the Exchange. This will be done over a 15-year period. So it's obviously a long-term plan, but it's already going to be underway, I think, later this year. And I mean, that's what you want to see. You want to see this. You want to see a city that obviously is being regenerated and getting in at this time. For, I would suggest, holding on to a property for at least probably 10 years in this region. By the time that sort of cycle's complete, the city centre will be a very different place. And obviously, along with that comes the attraction of renting it out, resale values, obviously the capital appreciation over time as well. So just a few key stats just to finish on Preston. There's a 28.8% price forecast by Savills in the next 5 years in the northwest region. Obviously, Preston sits in the heart of that and is the fastest growing city in that region. In 2019, the average property sold for 121% of its asking price. And we touched on the Preston population, where the renters are going to come from, where your tenants are going to come from is obviously the younger population who potentially can't afford to get on the property ladder just yet. And the average rental yield there is 5.7% in the city centre, which, I mean, it's very, very strong. If you look at Manchester now, you're probably looking at, in the city centre, you're probably looking at 4, and very similar in the likes of Birmingham as well, maybe 4.5. So you're looking at much more healthy numbers. And I think in our particular project here, we're expecting to overachieve with that, given the fact that the build cycle is a couple of years away, and also the development will be probably the premier development once it's completed in Preston. So obviously hoping to achieve higher rental yields because of that. So onto the development itself, there's 200 units. We sold around 50 of those. We've only launched the project earlier this year, so I mean, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's really picked up in terms of interest. I think that, like, as I mentioned, the price point is very affordable in terms of investment, and it's particular first investment into the UK. So I think that's driven that really. Bit more information there. Obviously, it's a PR1 postcode, shows that it's obviously city centre, which is good. Completions in Q3 2023. So that's a key thing to consider, really. Obviously, hopefully, COVID and everything else is a distant memory by then. But the good thing about getting involved very early in this, I mean, work started on site about 6 weeks ago, is that you're looking at the cheapest possible price that we've got now. What will happen throughout the build is that we will increase the price incrementally as we go through to Q3 2023. So buying now is obviously the best time. Potentially in six weeks' time, we may raise the price by 2%, for example. So obviously buying now and achieving your yield at the end will benefit from getting involved early.
And Nick, can I ask, since you launched, as you say, 6 weeks ago or whatever, and 200 units, is it a okay question to ask? How many have actually gone?
I think we're over 50 now from the last count. I think we've been working with Holborn on. I think we're in double figures with Holborn now as well in terms of the advisors we're working with. So, I mean, just as an idea in terms of demographic where things are coming from, I find it pretty interesting that all the clients I've worked with on this, pretty much everyone is a UK expat. That's not just exclusive to Holborn, but I think that what people, I used to work in the Hong Kong office, and what people over there, it was very much difficult to sort of start pitching them Manchester and Birmingham because they were always wanting London. Whereas, I mean, trying to sell Preston in that region, we find it fairly difficult because it's been difficult to educate them on a particular area. But what's happened with your expats, for example, they know where Preston is. They know about it. They know a bit about the area. They also see that there's a lot more value in that particular region than there maybe is in your major cities now. So I think that the point on that is that it's a good indicator that expats and UK passport holders are investing into this region, whether or not they live there or not. It seems to be where a lot of our clients are coming from. So it's pretty interesting.
I guess clients are really benefiting from the fact that there is so much improvement going on, so many new businesses going in, and the regeneration that goes on. You're actually hobby horsing on somebody else spending the council's money and gentrifying the area. So it's a win-win, really.
Yeah, exactly. And what you see, if you take Manchester, another example, I mean, what you've seen with obviously the amount of over the years what Manchester City Council have done to the city centre, then you see big investment coming over, like into Manchester Airport, for example. I mean, that's mainly private Chinese investment that's developed that whole area. So you start seeing major businesses then committing funds to it. So yeah, I think that's a trend that we will see in Preston over the next few years. And yeah, it's you can just sit back and watch. Hopefully, when you obviously the property's completed and it's tenanted, and which I don't think tenanting is going to be an issue whatsoever from what I understand from the statistics we've just talked about.
Looks like it's got a nice concierge there as well, which is quite nice for people that are working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the roof terrace as well in between the 3 blocks. So if you just go back to this slide here, there's a roof terrace there on top of block B, which obviously is a great thing for everyone to be able to use. Yeah, the concierge area is something that obviously in the times of COVID and everything like that, I mean, people are wanting and working from home. It's nice to have a breakout area, I guess, from just your apartment. And then obviously the state-of-the-art gymnasium in the base of the building, and there's likely to be commercial premises in there at the moment, at the bottom of the building as well. We don't know what they're going to be at the moment. Obviously, it's too far away, but the types of businesses that will go in there are probably convenience stores, maybe cafes, things that are going to be of benefit to the tenants as well. So that's something to obviously think about in the future. So just to mention a bit more about the heating group, I think it's important to know why we're working with them on this particular project and why they're working with us. Obviously, I've mentioned that bit before, but they're specialists in this particular region. So I think this is their third residential project in the city centre of Preston. They've got a major portfolio. They've got a big pipeline of projects in the northwest of England coming up. So I think this will be the first of many projects. Hopefully, we work with them on. And they, very much like us, have a lettings company that will manage the building, manage the lettings side of everything, and they'll be starting looking for tenants probably around 6 months away from completion, so that hopefully, as soon as your property is completed and the keys are handed over, assuming that you want to rent it out, you're going to have a tenant moving in on day one, and obviously there's no rental void. You start earning a return on your investment straight away. So yeah, just a few more pictures there. The amenities a bit closer up, and then the interiors again very similar to the finishes, obviously, that we work with on the likes of Axis and Oxygen and all the other buildings we've got at the moment. So just to drill down a bit on the numbers here. So here's a 1-bed recommendation. Obviously, the list price is there. There's a 5% discount, as Chris touched on before. We're willing to give or as an incentive, we're giving at the moment a £1,000 legal contribution that can be taken off the price of the property, obviously towards your legal fees. I mean, the average legal fee is probably around £1,200. So that's obviously a good incentive for this point in time. And if you look at the gross yields there, 6.6%, and then what we tend to do with our clients, obviously outline all of the other costs rather than just having a headline gross yield, what you're actually going to earn once the management fees are out of there, the service costs and everything else. And the service cost, something that I was talking to a client yesterday about, is obviously at £1.80 per square foot. Again, it doesn't eat too much into what you're earning out of the property, whereas you see in the city centre of Manchester or Liverpool, you might be £3-4 per square foot now. So again, that's something that makes the investment more attractive.
And also, Nick, if I can just interrupt, good news for you, Darren, when it comes to working out mortgageability for clients, wherever they are from.
Yeah, because one of the main things that we find the issue with is the service charges and everything else, to make sure it's not it's within a acceptable level with the lenders. So, but like Nick was saying, due diligence is done. Most of this due diligence is done already, so we've checked all this. So there's definitely lenders out there that can actually do this for everybody.
Yeah. And the question that's coming at the bottom, different nationalities, different parts of the world, getting mortgages, Darren, a problem, or slightly less lenders but not a problem?
Yeah, touch base, it's just the same. So wherever they are, well, there's always lenders. It just sometimes it's a little bit more tricky, but we've definitely got lenders for most nationalities. So just make contact, get the client to fill the fact find in, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure they can purchase. So it's always good to make sure there is mortgage options sort of when you come to reserve the property. So whether that be before you reserve or after the reservation, but it's always good to get it early doors to make sure there's definitely mortgage options available to people, not leave it too late.
Well, you're the expert, so Nick, back to you.
Yeah. So yeah, two-bed recommendation, obviously in the same format as before. Very similar yield. We sort of did that on purpose just to give you an idea that obviously they do vary throughout the building. The average gross yield across the building is 6.5%. I think the highest gross yield we've got available is 7.5% from the projections and the expected yields that we put together. So I think that's for the 3 beds. But yeah, I mean, I think the main investment units probably at this stage, I'd say, would be the one beds and 2 beds. People tend to be more interested in those. I would personally think that they're easier to rent out than a 3 bed. Obviously, moving forward as well. There's less likely to be issues with just one or two tenants. So that would be my personal recommendation and what I would purchase if it was me. So yeah, that again just breaks it down for you. Obviously, we can put a full cash flow together in a bit more detail. That obviously, Chris, we work together on those for advisors and clients. We've got a 5-year cash flow that we can include mortgages on and everything else. So that's something that obviously away from this call we can do in a bit more detail and select individual units to fit into those cash flow forecasts.
And with clients on, thank you very much for joining. Always go back to your wealth managers if you do anything, or come directly to us, and we can give you whatever you want. And I only say that when it comes to choosing a unit, Nick, which you just sort of touched on. It's great to have your expertise to say, right, okay, they were on the 3rd floor, overlooking this way. That's going to be a nice view, that sort of thing. Whereas sometimes not that easy on a floor plan, is it, to see?
No, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we're working on this pretty much daily. So we know exactly where the sort of most desirable units are, or I guess it's dependent on who you speak to, but I know where mine are and the reasons as to why that is. So yeah, it's always good to get in touch with us on that. So just to go through the payment plan, and there is a couple of incentives as well. Investing into a project this early, the developer has put a couple of incentives together that I'll touch on in a little bit more detail in a second. But just the generic sort of payment plan here is a £5,000 reservation fee. You fill a reservation form in. Then you get, once the AML checks are done and everything's completed, you get a legal introduction. As we mentioned before, the incentive for using our solicitors here is a £1,000 deduction from the price of your property. And then within 4 weeks, typically, it's a 25% deposit. I mean, there is a bit of flexibility on that if it's needed. I mean, if you need to make it a longer exchange period, that's possible. We've also done things in the past where we've split deposits if a client needs that. So, I mean, obviously it's a case by case thing, but that's the typical payment plan. And then, yeah, mortgage and furniture packs probably come further down the line. And then obviously upon completion, you got 75% of the property, of the value of the property, which most people will use the bulk of that in a mortgage in this particular scenario. So a couple of the incentives that the developer's offering at this moment in time is if you put a larger deposit down, if you're willing to put a 50% deposit down, there's a possible a rental guarantee for 2 years, and there's also the possibility of getting 5% return on your funds that you've got outstanding. So if you put 50% deposit down, you can get a 5% return on those funds during the whole build process. That amount of money is then deducted off your apartment when you come to complete. So there's a couple of incentives that normally these things exist at the start of a build to incentivize clients and obviously reward them for getting involved so early. But if not, just a straightforward 25%, 75% payment plan. I hope that's clear, those incentives. If any advisors or clients want to discuss that in more detail, then I can go through it in a bit more detail. It is a little bit confusing when you perhaps first hear it, but yeah, it's proving quite attractive with a lot of investors that I've been dealing with.
The good news is, Nick, that this show is actually recorded and people can play it back and get it all again.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I don't like watching myself on screen, so I won't be doing that. But yeah, that's everything from me. If there's any burning questions, please fire them my way, and I'll do my best to answer them.
What have you got coming up, Nick?
So in the future, I mean, we'll complete Uptown and Oxygen in the centre of Manchester this year. We've also got a project in Altrincham called The Address, which is probably not majorly investment focused. It's only 36 units, and it tends to be sort of end users that are investing into that. That completes in Q1 next year. But in terms of new launches, we're probably in August time going to have, I touched briefly on it before, a project in South Manchester in the city centre. We're hoping to probably launch that, August, September time, I think. And then you may have seen in the news later on, we've bought a hotel in the centre of Manchester, the old Britannia Hotel that's on Deansgate. So what we're doing there is we're building 300 apartments in that on that site. We're also doing an element of commercial there, and we're also obviously revamping the hotel, and that's going to be taken over by a major hotel operator. That will be launched next year, early next year. And that's obviously, that will be sort of a jewel in the crown, I guess, of our city centre developments, in the fact that it's a full mixed use scheme, something that we've been working on for a very long time. So yeah, that's something else to look forward to next year. And obviously our relationship with Holborn, we're going to be working with you guys on that going forward as well. So yeah, it's exciting times, really.
As far as I'm concerned, a lot of interest in the exchange, hence why we've got so many people who have tuned in today. Darren, just one last one from you. Interest rates at the moment, wherever you may be. He's saying 3.5% to, I can lip read. Go on.
So I don't know what that was about. Sorry, the average interest rate at the moment is about, depends where they are, anywhere between 3.25 to all the way up until 6.5%. But 6.5% is obviously last ditched attempt for ones, really. But yeah, so there's options for everybody. Nick mentioned obviously a second ago about the 3 bedrooms and 3-bedroom apartments or whatever they got. So with the 3-bedroom ones, there's a little bit more due diligence we have to do with local authority and licensing. So if you've got 3 separate people in one property, some lenders and some local authorities class that as a HMO. So we just need to be doing a little bit more due diligence. So when somebody's come to reserve, and I know Nick obviously mentioned this, as soon as somebody's reserved the property, we need to make sure that person can get the funding. So regardless whether it's a 1-bed, 2-bed or 3-bed, get it done early. Don't leave it late. So always get the agreement in principle done, which we can do, and we would do all the due diligence to make sure there's not going to be any issues.
And 65%, is that where you're pitching yourself, loan to value?
Yeah, 65%. At a push a little bit more, but if you're really focusing on 65%, that's great. But if you do get a client, or if it's a client that's got less than sort of only 30%, then we can have a look at that as well for you. But bearing in mind, if it's obviously the lower the deposit, the higher the interest rate is going to be.
That's great, everybody. Thank you very much. Yes, it is recorded. Yes, there are units available. Please get hold of your wealth manager or direct to us, and we can answer any questions you've got. Nick, thanks very much for doing that.
Pleasure.
And my commiserations to your father about last weekend, that they did win the league. And thank you, everybody. That was a bit unfair, wasn't it? All right, thanks, everyone. We'll toss. Thanks as always. Thanks, marketing. Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys. Cheers. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.